if you knew it was going to hit his ear and you were in his marketing team, you would have shot him in the ear that day. Like if because that was, as we both said, he won the election that day.
Yeah.
And he won the election because many people will now see him as some kind of hero.
So I'll tell you how a CIA officer thinks about this, right? If you wanted to stage an attempted assassination, if that's what you want to do, is stage an attempted assassination, you would never shoot at the person who was the principal. You would shoot away. You'd shoot up in the sky. The principal is the primary target that you're trying to support, right? So Donald Trump was the principal. If I was trying to stage an assassination to win him popular praise, I would not shoot at him because the risk is too great that the shot would either miss and hit him, possibly hit him fatally, or it would miss him and hit someone in the audience, and then a rally member dies, and now we have to account for why somebody at the rally died. Like people were killed and people were hurt at the Donald Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. If you wanted to stage an assassination, you would shoot 35, 40 degrees off target, well away from anybody accidentally getting hit, because what's going to happen? Everybody's going to hear the gunshots. So the gunshots will still cause the panic. The Secret Service would still jump in. They'd still cover him. There'd still be all the same newsworthiness without the risk of killing somebody. And if you really, really wanted to make it like, so it made headlines, you could even potentially stage some kind of cut that's covered up with a small skin-colored Band-Aid so that when the shots go off, you can wipe off or pull off the Band-Aid and then there's going to be active red spots, right? You would never actually shoot at the principal. That's what people don't understand about conspiracies, is that when you actually plan to carry out a covert action, you plan to carry out the covert action in the safest possible way. You don't run the risk of actually shooting the principal.
So, but let's play out the scenario that it was a conspiracy. So what could have happened there? And I was in an office the other day, one of the companies that I'm involved with, and there was a group of people gathered around a laptop watching the footage, and half of the people thought it was some kind of conspiracy, and that maybe he fell down and then like cut his own ear. And then the other half of the people thought that was craziness. What side of the fence do you sit on? You think it was a real shooter?
I think it was a real shooter. Mm-hmm. I absolutely think it was a real shooter. The principles that CIA teaches us about how to analyze a situation are twofold. They teach us how to analyze a situation, but they also teach us how to predict a conspiracy. And conspiracies have a very clear anatomy. They have a very clear process. All conspiracies start with something that is factual. Something really does happen. And then, immediately following the factual thing, there's a lack of information. Inside of that lack of information, the third piece of the puzzle is speculation. Now, speculation and suspicion are very close cousins. Suspicion is healthy, right? You've heard of healthy suspicion. Speculation is not healthy. Speculation is what it takes for you to create an answer to a story that's not based on facts, which is where the fourth element of a conspiracy comes from, a story that closes the loop. Because when there's information missing, it creates an open loop. Well, guess what human brains like? Conveniently closed loops. So we can't handle an open loop very well for very long. So then we start speculating on what might have happened until someone defines for us an answer, and then all of a sudden you have an answer that closes the loop and you have a conspiracy. Conspiracies happen all the time. Conspiracies happen in your own home. Who's the last one that who ate the last piece of bread, right? Who's the one that drank the last bit of milk? How are there no more eggs left in the refrigerator, right? Lack of information leads to speculation, and then we close the loop with a story in our mind. When you look at what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, there's all the elements for a conspiracy. There's facts, a lack of information, speculation, and somebody's closing the story loop. And all these different conspiracies are gaining momentum. But when you look at the factual analysis of what happened, there are pictures, there are diagrams, there's a corpse of a 20-year-old shooter holding a high-powered rifle on top of a roof aimed at the stage. There's reports of local sheriff and local police officers being notified of that. There's bystanders who have reported that. There's technology that's been employed to verify that. There's enough facts there to know that there really was someone who was young by name who took a shot at the president. That's what we know. Guess what happens tomorrow? We learn more. We don't have to know all the answers today. More information will come. Well, as soon as Donald Trump was shot, I called up one of my friends who's a retired Secret Service officer. And I said to him that from my point of view, from what I understand about close protection, everything was done pretty close to right. There's always gaps at any kind of political rally. That's why they're dangerous. You can't make it 100% secure. That's why there's snipers on the roof. There's not snipers on the roof because they feel like the grounds are safe. There's snipers on the roof because they know that there's gaps. There's not Secret Service on the sides of the stage carrying guns because they think that they're safe. There's Secret Service on the sides of the stage because they know that there's gaps. Of course there's gaps. You can't manage all risks. The person took a shot from over 400 feet. 400 feet is a long, difficult shot. Empirically, it's a long, difficult shot. Even though the newspapers come out and say it's a turkey shoot or an easy shot or a standard shot or a basic shot, it is not. Any hunter out there will tell you 400 yards is a difficult shot, and you have to have a high-powered rifle built for that kind of distance to shoot that length. So there's all kinds of misinformation that's going around as people try to spin up a story. So for me, it was a real assassination attempt by a real person whose motives are still unknown.
I was listening to something, and the person was saying that maybe this, the CIA or somebody infiltrated this young man and, encouraged him over a period of time to get up there on that roof and all these kinds of things. The heart of the problem here is we're quite distrusting and we don't have answers, and most of us aren't informed. So there's basically the small life that we live, and then above us we see like billionaires and powerful people, and we hear that they do or have historically done very nefarious, malicious things, and that becomes our sort of shed, is that we are the average person, and then up there, outside the shed, there's all these billionaires, powerful Illuminati, and they are doing these really malicious things. Now, in part, that's true, but maybe only in part. And we kind of assume this broad strokes approach to anything that happens, and we go government, matrix, conspiracy. The CIA does have history of doing things like this.
True. We're coming into a conversation that's twofold. One, we're talking about a pre-9/11 CIA. Pre-9/11, post-9/11 is important to create a distinction for CIA because prior to September 11th, CIA was a small, highly funded organization with very little oversight. They could come up with crazy stuff like trying to poison Fidel Castro so his beard fell out, or trying to create the Bay of Pigs invasion, or trying to do all sorts of wacky stuff from, MK Ultra to whatever else. That was a wacky, pre-9/11, unsupervised, Wild West kind of CIA. Post 9/11, the 9/11 Commission, written in 2003, highlighted that CIA failed to do its job for September 11th. So now there's tons of oversight. It's now a very large, very fat, well-funded bureaucracy, whereas before it was a well-funded free-for-all.
If it was a conspiracy, which department or which organization would be responsible, in your opinion?
If it was a conspiracy, there would be no department in charge of the conspiracy.
So it would be something else.
Correct. Right. Because when governments act, when individuals in a government act in a conspiratorial manner, it's not formalized. If it was formalized, it would be a policy, right? They act independently. And there's all sorts of instances where people act independently, from Edward Snowden all the way to Aldrich Ames, right? There are people who actually carried out conspiratorial efforts to try to gain some kind of leverage that worked for them for a while and then worked against them.
If that bullet had hit Donald Trump in the head, how do you think the US would be different? I was thinking about this when I was driving down the street yesterday.
It's hard to define that, really.
I was thinking we probably wouldn't be sat here now because there probably would have been quite a bit of unrest potentially. Potentially, I don't know.
I don't know. Like it would have, I think we would have still been sitting here.
I was wondering.
I would have gotten my ass on a plane to come sit with you at least.
Well,
sure.
I know, right? So you never know how these sort of domino effects can happen and people can break out on the streets. And, because what might happen, let's just play out this scenario. Donald Trump gets shot. Then some crazy right-wing person comes out and shoots someone else.
Mm.
And then the streets of LA look very different to the streets of LA today. And we're sat here in LA. So do you know what I mean? That's kind of the domino effect that's playing out in my mind. There'd be some kind of revenge, right?
Well, I don't know. That's what's interesting. So politically motivated violence is tough. If Donald Trump would have been shot, chances are the shooter would have also been shot. So from the eyes of the American people, and for sure from the messaging that would have come from the White House, the threat was neutralized, and it's a tragedy that we lost a former American president. Joe Biden would have come out and would have made kind, caring remarks about Donald Trump. Nobody would be talking about him as crazy or whatever else. He'd go down as a hero, following the democratic process for something he believed in. History would have been written a very different way.
Oh, I don't know. Because I think if Donald Trump had been hit, I mean, this is just from chilling on Twitter. If Donald Trump had been hit, regardless of whether that kid had been shot, and regardless of whatever, people would have believed that it was some kind of deep state, CIA, left-wing, Hillary Clinton involvement. Even if there was a body, fingerprints, and they found the kid's hard drive and he was planning it, there's a group of people that still would have believed that. Absolutely, like, because there's a group of people, as you know, that believe anything.
Correct.
And that group, someone in that group of people would have taken a retaliatory action. And then this starts the stone throwing that I think. So they would have, gone, they might have gone to a left-wing, I don't know, black event, festival, and done something. And then you have the
tit for tat. I don't disagree that it's a possibility, but the question is whether or not a group would have reached critical mass to take some kind of action.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, think about the alternative. The alternative is the streets of, you name the conservative state, Texas, Florida, whatever, Pennsylvania maybe, a giant parade fit for a king, right? Parading Donald Trump through the streets, something to keep, and Joe Biden happily endorsing the money for it to happen because he's an ex-president and because that's showing like unity and nationality. It could have been a chance to really bring the whole country together and end some of the bipolar division. There would have still been, just like you said, there would have been a group of people who believed in some sort of deep state action. And there may have been follow-up violence. You're right again. I think all of those things are possibilities. But it is also a possibility that it would have gone in the other direction. There still would have had to be a new candidate identified by the Republican National Convention. So things would have gone differently from that day.
Very interesting. If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.